They just stood there, wrapped in a strange sort of calm, as his hands wrapped around her waist and hers around his shoulders, staring intensely into each other's eyes as if love had wrapped around them tightly and refused to let go. It's like biting into something sweet but tasting bitterness, like standing in the sunlight without feeling its warmth, like driving fast, foot on the gas, but never breaking 50. That's life without your soulmate. It may still move, but it doesn't move right. It plays, but it's offbeat. You don't always know what's missing, though, only that something is. And after a while, you settle for bitterness, convincing yourself it's tasty. India had lived in that hollow rhythm so long, it seemed like the part of her that once danced to it had died. This morning, she woke before the sun, as usual, jasmine tea in hand. She stepped onto the balcony to greet the dawn, watering her plants with a quiet grace. She bathed in golden rays as she showered, meditating on all she was still grateful for. 2 hours later, like clockwork, Greg rose at 8. He made breakfast, helped get the kids dressed, played his part in their tightly choreographed family routine. But in the bustle of kids and breakfast, they missed each other. It was always moving, performing, but no feeling, not a glance, not a brush of skin, not a wink or a playful slap on the butt, not even a good morning. As they were heading out, India stopped him. She reached for his arm gently, grounding him in place, trying to pull him into her presence. She looked into his eyes and found the same thing she always did: cold, detached emptiness. Still, she offered her warmth, hoping something would spark. "Hope to see you tonight," she said softly, rubbing the inside of his forearm. Her eyes searched his face, clinging to some sliver of tenderness. Greg shifted, avoiding the pull of her gaze. "You know I don't bother with that stuff," he mumbled, eyes already drifting past her. "Just once," she whispered, barely audible. "I wrote a piece about us. I'd love for you to hear it." "I've got a lot of work to finish, India." Her grip tightened, just slightly, eyes shimmering. "Just once." Her plea hung between them like an unfinished lyric. Greg finally met her eyes and tried to return a hint of her warmth. It wasn't even half of what she needed, but it was more than he usually gave, so she accepted it. "I'll try," he offered, brushing a loose lock from her face and stroking her cheek. She smiled, because in that moment she saw a flicker of the man she married, the one who used to notice her warmth, the man who could let himself fall into that warmth occasionally. She prayed this version would stay, and for a fleeting second, she felt happy. Happier than she'd been in a long time. But Greg and India had the kind of love that looked good only on paper. House? Check. Kids? Check. Degrees? Businesses? Stability? Check, check, check. But all those check marks only filled the boxes. They never touched the soul. Because even with all that, she could still feel Greg merely tolerating her. She saw it in his eyes at the kids' birthday parties, in his body language during every anniversary dinner, in the way he refused to write wedding vows, as if love were just a contract to be signed. But India was a lover of love, a collector of moments, a woman who needed more than just presence. She craved connection, words, depth, softness, fire. She wanted a love that didn't just exist, but lived, breathed, danced, listened. Greg never understood that part of her. To him, poetry was a hobby, a distraction. He'd say, focus on what pays the bills. He didn't bother to read her poems, didn't ask about the sacred metaphors that bled from her chest onto the page, didn't recognize that the love in those verses was the same love she had once tried, desperately, to pour into him. India wanted him to see her fire, the part of her that burned with feeling, the part that once burned for him. But he never paid attention, never noticed when the flame started dying. That was her first sign they were no longer aligned. Despite the flame in her marriage dying, India kept writing, kept showing up, even when her passion felt like a secret affair, one that allowed her to escape from the cold silence inside her own home. Because something inside her refused to settle for a life void of feeling, emotional depth, passion. And she didn't even realize how deeply she needed to be seen as a poet, as a lover, as the other half of a sacred puzzle until she met Jante. The theater hums with quiet conversation and the scent of sticky eucalyptus and sunflowers. Dim lights cast a golden hue across exposed brick walls, aged wood beams, and lush velvet curtains. The decor is far from polished, but it breathes history and poetry. Jante leans back in his seat, one arm stretched across the back of the chair beside him. He came to support a friend performing spoken word tonight, but he's barely listening to the man on stage because he senses her before he sees her. A bright spirit in need of light. Third row, center aisle. Skin like burnt honey, curls gathered high and wild. She's sitting with perfect posture, but something's off. Her face is beautiful, but tired. Bright, but dim. The kind of spirit that spent a lifetime living in the shadows of people far less talented. People who feared her shine, so they taught her to fear it as well. Her energy is drained from fighting. Her soul carries fears and traumas that were never hers to bear. She is love and art personified. But she's been handled by filthy hands that didn't know her value. She's surrounded by people, yet she looks completely alone. Like her body's here, but her mind is somewhere far away. Jante tilts his head, studies her. He doesn't know her name, but something about her feels like deja vu, the kind that brings dreams that could have been memories. And then he hears it. Next up, India Cole. She stands, their eyes lock, not for long, a second too short to mean something, a second too long to mean nothing. She walks to the stage in slow, intentional steps. The crowd claps, but Jante barely hears it. His world narrows to the sound of her boots on wooden floorboards. India steps to the mic, clears her throat, looks out at the crowd, but not at him. Still, he leans in, like she's speaking only to him. And then she begins. Hoped you'd show, just for one night. No need for grand or perfect scenes. Just you and all the space between. I light the room. I pour the wine. I smile like everything's just fine. But silence sits across from me. Your absence, loud as it can be. I don't want much. Not diamond rings. Just tenderness and little things. Your eyes on mine, a touch, a glance, a moment where I stand a chance. Would you have noticed if I cried? Or sensed the part of me that died? I don't need vows or skies blue. Just want you to notice. I notice you. Jante exhales slowly. He hadn't even realized he was holding his breath. Because now, he knows two things. Her name is India. And, whatever this feeling is, it's as sacred as the ancestors' unspoken prayers. India walks off stage. Her piece lingers in the air like incense. Slow, sacred, unforgettable. Jante watches her disappear behind the curtain, and something in him stirs. He hadn't planned to perform tonight. He didn't even bring anything written. But something about her made his heart pick up a pen. The host returns to the stage. We got room for one more, if anybody's feeling brave tonight. Jante stands. No announcement. No hesitation. Just motion. Like the mic had always been his. Like this moment was pre-written in someone's journal entry. India returned to the audience, sitting in the crowd, and she catches movement out of the corner of her eye. Her tired gaze lifts and widens. It's him. The man who looked at her like she wasn't just seen, but understood. He steps to the mic, adjusts it, doesn't clear his throat, doesn't need to. His voice is low, like jazz at midnight, unrehearsed, intimate. I always told myself that if I ever met love, I'd wrap my arms around her and never let go. I'd tell her how treasured she was, how her essence could fill a room like no one else. I promised that if I ever met beauty, I'd treat her right. Take her out, make her laugh, show her that those other men didn't miss her because she wasn't worthy. They missed her because they were blind. I always knew that if I met class, I'd greet her gently, meet her wherever she stood, and kiss her softly, like I was saying grace. So, when she walked on that stage, in a green wrap top and caramel brown pants, carrying all three qualities like they were stitched into her skin, my spirit rose, time stilled, and my soul filled. Because even though she looked sad, even though something in her eyes said she'd been overlooked, underloved, underappreciated, I saw her. So I wrote this to make her smile, to let her know you are treasured. Those other men were blind, and how do you do? India tries not to react, but a slow, soft smile escapes her lips, unguarded and real. Her eyes say, I know you're talking about me. But her body stays still, unsure what to do with this kind of attention. Jante smiles back, not cocky, grateful. He lifts his hand, kisses the air, and blows it softly her way. Smooth. He grabbed a sunflower off the wreath wrapped around the railing and walked over to hand it to India. Bowed, then walked off. Like her smile fixed something broken inside him. Like this moment was enough. They parted ways that night without speaking. Both respected their current situations with their spouses. A silent gaze and a warm smile would be the extent of their soul-charging exchange for tonight. Just for tonight. India arrived home with a sunflower in her hair and the lines of the poem written for her in her heart. This man who knew her all of 15 minutes had acknowledged, processed, and reflected her light back to her in ways her own husband had never even attempted to. She felt seen, but she knew this could be a slippery slope. She wanted to fight for her marriage, and no stranger was going to change that. But she could enjoy the fantasy innocently, right? Just as she began to savor the sweetness of the moment, Greg opened the door to let her in. Didn't even bother to offer an explanation as to why he didn't show up to her showcase. Just opened the door and walked away. She followed him into the bedroom quietly so she didn't wake the kids. "What happened to you tonight?" she asked as she began undressing. Greg tossed his hands up in the air and blew air out of his mouth aggressively. Frustrated, she even questioned him. "I know you have a lot going on, but I need you to try to show up. Be present, somehow. I'm losing hope," she said as he lay in bed and leaned against the headboard, hands clasped tightly as he focused intensely on the bra she tossed on the floor. "I don't know what you want from me," he replied, eyebrow arched, head tilted. "I don't do smoke-filled theaters and rooms filled with hippies dressed like Harry Potter characters. India, that's your thing," he said coldly, not even meeting her eyes. He had been honest about his disdain for artists and deep fillers. They annoyed him, plain and simple. But she was both, and she was also his wife. That meant she was different, right? In this moment, she wasn't so sure. "That's horribly offensive," she said, chuckling uncomfortably at his incredibly insensitive joke she wasn't even sure was even a joke. "I'm just asking you to be there for me, your wife, your partner," she said, kneeling beside the bed, holding his hand to her chest. "Your friend," she pleaded, searching his eyes as she always did, but as always, there was nothing there. "As my spouse, partner, and friend, I need you to understand that I can't be in those places with those people." "Even if your wife is one of them?" she asked, hoping to elicit a warmer response by softening the topic. "Even if my wife is one of them," he said so sternly. End of topic. There was no stretching for him, and there never was. India had always been a creative, a writer, a poet, and a deep filler. But Greg only approved of her utilizing her talents if she wrote for $1 million TV show. She had initially put her passion for writing aside for her career and their family. Even though she dimmed her creative light for him because it made him uncomfortable when she talked in big circles about art and the patterns of words and concepts she could pen in her poetry. A year after their youngest started school, she felt numb. She was making a lot of money, but her heart for creating was only pumping cash. She needed to feel something real, loud, and raw, so she started going to poetry nights to get her fix. The environment brought her back to life, and she wanted Greg to see that. She needed him to see how alive she felt on the stage, but she had no plans to stop just because he was uncomfortable with her talents and the spaces that helped her shape her creative gifts. And nights like that night, where her pleas fell on deaf ears, made her realize that she would never receive her husband's support. How could you face a truth so cold without resenting your partner? But India was a woman of values and morals, so she continued to honor her vows and the men she made them to, hoping that love would change his mind. But honestly, the stranger's words were on her mind. She heard him loudly every time she took her dawn showers. She'd hear him as the water soothed the aching of her failing marriage, saying, because even though she looked sad, even though something in her eyes said she'd been overlooked, underloved, underappreciated, I saw her. He saw her. There was something in his gaze that said he meant every word. She never felt so acknowledged as she did in that moment. But he was just a stranger. And if he knew, truly knew her, he'd probably run for the hills. So she moved on with her life, working, kids, marital obligations. But to tell the truth, ever since that day, for India, nothing was ever the same again. Jante had a long flight to catch back home after the open mic night at Grand Lyric Theater. He was in town on business, overseeing a short term project, and had a few hours to return home and relieve his longtime girlfriend of their 8-year-old daughter. He had a good time during his visit to his hometown. He got to visit his parents, eat at restaurants he frequented as a teen, met up with friends, and even got to see a friend he met in a Facebook group perform. Of all the things he got to do that filled him with joy, meeting India seemed to be at the top of his list. This seemed strange because she was a stranger. A beautiful stranger, but a stranger still. Something about her lit up the old, dim, and dusty theater, and a small portion of his life. Seeing her sadness did something to him. It was like seeing a valuable diamond on the ground covered in dirt. But knowing his poem made her smile, made her happy, even in the tiniest way, made him happier than anything else ever could. As he arrived home, his girlfriend greeted him at the door as she always did. "How was your flight, my love?" she said, closing the door with her foot and enveloping him into a sweet kiss as she caressed his thick locks. "It was long," he said, exhaling and rubbing the small of her back. Chantel kissed Jante intimately, alternating between sucking on his bottom and top lip as she rubbed her nose with his. Eskimo kisses is what she liked to call them. Her affectionate nature made Jante feel desired, but there were other things he needed too. "Don't you have to get to work?" he asked in between kisses. "It can wait," she said, removing her top slowly, then undoing her bra as she reached into his pants. She grabbed him in a demanding manner, like she owned him. He hated when she did that. She tried massaging him as she pressed herself onto him, forced his hand onto her chest, made him squeeze her as she tried to awaken him. But just as he started to feel himself rise, Rennie, their 8-year-old, ran into the room. "Daddy's back," she said. "Rennie, baby," she said impatiently. "What did Mommy tell you about coming into rooms without permission?" "Hey, Chantel, she... Stay out of it, Jante," she snapped. "Go back into the room until I tell you to come out," she said. But Jante wasn't having it. He grabbed Rennie and embraced her. "She just happy to see her daddy," he said, kissing her forehead. "Juice?" Rennie asked her dad as she fidgeted with his locks. "Of course," he said as he walked into the kitchen with her. Just as he sat her down on the counter and opened the refrigerator, he heard the front door slam violently. Jante didn't feel bad. His lover only ever wanted to be lovers, but she neglected the other parts of their relationship most of the time. She never truly even looked at him unless he was inside of her. This topic had been the center of many heated arguments. Jante felt his head begin to ache as he thought of the possibility of another heated exchange once Chantel returned home. He felt the pressure building in his chest from all the mean things he just knew she would say. Punishment for him refusing her sexual advances. She got mean when she didn't get her way. Downright verbally abusive. Jante started to think about their last heated exchange. How they yelled so loud that Rennie hid from them. She hid so long, they thought she had left and called the cops, only to find her hidden behind old suitcases in their bedroom closet. She told them she was afraid of the scary words they used against each other, how it made her feel afraid to look at them in that state of anger. After that day, he promised to never let that happen in front of Rennie again, but he was tired of always having to bend for her. She had committed a lot of deal breakers in their relationship, but the words hurt worse than anything she could ever do. Seeing their daughter so affected hurt worser than the ugly words that cut him deep. He took out his phone and did what he always did. I'll make it up to you later. He sent this text with a gif of a man winking. Even though he had pushed his pride to the side to make amends, she left him on red all day. He called her 2 hours before her scheduled shift end time, the time she usually took a break, but she didn't answer. Damn, he mumbled, already bracing for the hostility she would bring home with her. No bad words, Rennie yelled from her bed. In an attempt to get ahead of the situation, he rushed to feed, bathe, and put their 8-year-old daughter to sleep. He ran Chantal a bath, lit candles, and played soft R&B. He set the mood so when she got home, she wouldn't have the time to lash out. She walked in with her heels in one hand, her water bottle in the other, and her purse hanging off her shoulder. She stared at Jonte and gave him that "I know what you're trying to do" look as she set her bag onto the leather couch. She then sat her heels and her water bottle on the bathroom floor and slammed the door. He heard her exhale slowly as she splashed into the warm bath and felt a sense of relief. If he could get her calmed just a little, he could prevent the big blow up from happening. He went into bed and waited for her to return, but instead, he heard the guest room door close. Jonte felt the relief settle onto him as he sunk deeper into his plush velvet duvet. He knew she was still upset, but his promise to his daughter was kept. For that night, Rennie could feel safe thinking her parents still loved each other. Jonte took out his phone and rewatched clips of the poetry event. His friend sent him clips of the poem he had written for India. It had gone viral. Everyone in the comments was asking if he shot his shot. "I want to know how this ends because that poem?" Fire emoji, one commenter said. Toward the end, the cameraman got a glimpse of the smile India flashed him before it ended, and the smile on her face, a stark contrast to the sad look she walked in with, gave him hope. And ever since that day, for Jonte, nothing was the same. India was full of hope as she did her rounds around the Grand Lyric Theater before the event started. She had taken a job as the director and took it upon herself to revamp the aged theater, not to improve it, but to sharpen the wisdom and history the building offered. Greg had not set foot into the theater and vehemently disagreed with her decision to quit screenwriting to care for a broken down money pit. His words. But she loved this money pit and refused to part with it. She told him clearly that if he continued to boycott her decision, she would file. So he did his best to pretend to be supportive, did everything short of actually coming to the theater. She desired a spouse who would support her decisions, but she settled for one who would just pretend so that he wouldn't lose her. India had a meeting with her staff for the night, informing them that they had a full house for their poetry jam night. Even had some popular poets signed up to read their pieces for the night. The theater upgrades and frequent events had attracted the attention of some very famous artists and writers. India had invited some of her screenwriting contacts to get some writers' deals on television shows, movies, and even songs for movie soundtracks. She felt good, like she was finally making a difference. The theater started to fill up with artists, supportive family, friends, and agents. India took her place on the stage and introduced herself, introduced the event and the night's beautiful host. She loved opening the show. Seeing all those creatives excited her. She heard the crowd hooting and cheering for her as she stepped off, but she lost her footing as she reached the last step and felt herself slip. Just before she hit the floor, she felt a strong, muscular frame swoop beside her and hold her firmly to ensure she gained her footing. It was him, the man who wrote her the poem. The moment was fuzzy. One second she was fighting for her life, heels clicking and tipping, and the next she was in his arms. They just stood there, wrapped in a strange sort of calm, as his hands wrapped around her waist and hers around his shoulders, staring intensely into each other's eyes as if love had wrapped around them tightly and refused to let go. She felt at home. He felt needed. But they were strangers. Strangers committed to others, and the realization sent them flying to the other side of the room, ensuring they stayed far away from each other for the rest of the night. Jante was invited to read his poem, the poem he wrote for her, as the opening act of the show. His poem had gone viral. No matter who shared it, it always got millions of views and thousands of comments. India knew Jante would be trouble, but after seeing the comments, she realized she had underestimated the amount of trouble he could be. They wanted to know if they ever got together, if the woman he wrote the poem for ever gave him a chance, if they would be the next great love story of the internet. India was a woman of value and morals, and her vows meant way more to her than some random man who was good at his craft. They both let the media play with the idea of them potentially getting together, but last she heard, he was in a happy relationship and so was she. This had no chance of ever being anything but a one-time encounter. A beautiful poem that spoke life into her. That's all it would ever be, and she was okay with that. The event went great. There was a vibe that just couldn't be created without the synergy of the perfect artist and the perfect audience. There was a band playing covers of popular R&B songs in the background. No lyrics, no vocals, just the music. There were candles, fresh sunflowers and eucalyptus on the corner tables, and at the entrance, couples were dancing with their significant others in between the poetry readings. This was a place where love thrived, and she wished Greg would have been there for her to dance with. She sat in the audience to enjoy some of the artist's poem before retiring to her office to prepare for the next event. She heard a knock on the door as she prepared to do her final walk around and walked directly into Jante, who was standing at her door. She jumped back faster than he could say hello. "What are you doing here?" she said in a frustrated tone as she fixed her blazer. "I came to say goodnight," he said. His smile was big and bright. "Good night," she said coldly as she walked away, heels clicking faster than her heartbeat. "Chemistry doesn't mean compromise," he said in a calm tone, sensing her hesitation. "What?" she said, turning to meet his gaze. "The poem wasn't for you. It was for me. I wanted to cheer up a beautiful stranger who seemed sad. It did that. That doesn't have to mean anything if you don't want it to," he said, walking toward her. She didn't reply, just stood there, hoping the desire to want it to be more would disintegrate. But you know, this has the potential to be more. People who weren't even there that night felt it. That means you felt it too. "Did you?" she asked, adjusting her handbag from one hand to the other nervously. "I felt something," he said, "but I understand your situation and I respect it." She chuckled lightly, sarcastically. "What is your definition of respect?" she asked jokingly. He chuckled with her. The tension in the moment eased just a little. "I respect your situation and mine. I just don't want to feel like we did something wrong because we had great chemistry. That's not compromising our morals or values. It's respecting our intuition," he said. She caught a whiff of his cologne as his hands gestured between them. He smelled of sweet incense and honey. She got lost in his energy for a moment. That smile, that scent, that face. She had to end the conversation, or this conversation would end her. "Thank you for the poem," she said, shaking his hand, "and good night." She then stood back, making it clear she would not continue the conversation. He gave her a nod and stepped back as well. "Good night, India," he said, but neither of them walked away.
Back, but I can't. I wanna leave you behind, but I can't. It's not easy to love you, darling. It's not easy to love you, darling. I should love you in the moment. I should tell you all the problems. It's not easy to love you, baby. It's not easy to love you, baby. It's not easy to love you, baby. You just run, you don't talking.